Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here to review Burn Turn, Season 1, Episodes 4 through 6. Gotta say, though, Episode 4 didn't get my entire attention. It just was a very, odd idea that, for me, I was like, it's trying really hard to win me over, but I'm not 100% sold. But then we get into Episode 5 and 6, I was like, okay, these are better ideas. Because, of course, we have episode 5 that is this bounty hunter episode. I'm like, okay, intrigued. And then we go into episode 6, and they play to the theme that this whole show is to be about, which is to be a road trip show, and it is to have this road trip idea. So, bravo to 5 and 6 for it was a solid, good episode, where the others were both great. And so, with that said, let's go into these episodes a little bit more. Let's tee them up, and then we'll get into spoilers. So, episode 4 gives us Max and the kids making their way to Aunt Vera, where it seems that this would be a very, boring, uneventful episode, but come to find out we have Ben, who is to desperately want to leave Vera's home to start to make his way through this neighborhood, to then realize that there is something unique about all of Vera's neighbors, as we realize that these neighbors have gotten body snatched, body swapped, and are taking over this neighborhood slowly but surely. And so we oddly enough have these Limaxes that want to body swap with the elderly. And so we have these kind of just surprising moments for elderly people. And so that I thought was an interesting episode. But again, I was like, I had to kind of get back into the show, and I was like, this show isn't gonna or this episode isn't going to work for me to kind of get me back into here. But, I really tried. Then we go into episode 5, which is to bring back Vilgax. Vilgax. So I'm like, is that the name? So we go into the next episode, and we find that there are 3 bounty hunters that Vilgax just hires all 3 of them, because it's whoever can give me the Omnitrix, I'll pay you the most. So we come to find that this episode is also for Ben to not just muscle through every mission that he's going to go on, that there needs to come to have Ben, as well as the people that he's with, that has to come up with some kind of strategy to defeat this foe, because it's not going to be so clear-cut and just smash him over the head with a stick and call it a day. No, there has to be some real thought about how to creatively take this monster down and definitively make sure that it is done for, that it's just kind of stuck in that one place, or just clearly defeated. So we go on and have the characters like Tetrix or 6-6, which I'm like, okay, I saw them randomly in some other episode that wasn't this one. And so I was like, okay, I knew who these characters were. And then I was like, okay, this is really cool how they're being played out here. And we come to find that Ben in that episode will kind of do the Ant-Man defense, or the Ant-Man way of beating people, or even the Iron Man way of beating people if you guys were to see the first film. But so we then go into episode 6, which is a play up the theme of this show being a road trip thing. And I was like, that is a great idea. If you're going to have a road trip show, you might as well do road trip things in it. And so I thought that episode 6 was great for the thing, because it's to give us something that you wouldn't normally see in like everyday other shows, because we don't have like a road trip show. So we have this island of misfit objects where we come to find that all of these things in one place would be like the largest something, like the largest deck of cards, or the largest rubber band, or the largest fish bowl, and so on and so forth, and it becomes really fascinating. But they have this whole weird mystery attraction, which is to be called It. So that leads our characters to be like, well, I want to know what it is. I'm going to take a huge bag of It with your name on it. So with that said, let's go on and let's get into that double five. I think it's about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about the time we get to spoil these episodes. So we go into episode 4, and in the beginning of this, we are at this ice cream shop that is just to be called Ice Cream in front of it. Like, wow, what a creative name. You couldn't have called it like Colorful Scoops or something like you could have had like an interesting name. But then again, like, I guess this show doesn't really want to get sued because, oh hey, like they ripped off the name and the logo and the thing of my thing. What the heck, show? Anyways, so, or you could have had it be called like Frozen Scoops, or I don't know. It could have been interesting. It could have been fun. But no, you went with ice cream. So we have Max that is trying to get money out of an ATM, and it seems he ends up getting thrown down by a hillbilly. Plah! Hey man, I'm gonna take a withdrawal myself. And so this hillbilly-ish like guy pushes Max down, and so while Gwen is asking for this absurd order, which would have the guy behind the counter who's just like, well, the only thing that I can order up for you is a napkin. And so we have Ben that is looking outside and realizing that he has to hero mode up. Because I guess that's what I'm calling when Ben 10 would just switch between aliens, because hero mode was the only thing that I could rationally come up with for when he swaps. Because also I was like, well, didn't he call it hero mode at some point anyways? I don't remember. And I think in some point of these episodes, I think he does state the word hero mode. But either way, that's the same conclusion that I would draw anyways, to figure out the transitional part, him swapping into things. So Ben calls out that he wants to get some Rocky Road. And in all honesty, for me, I was never all that creative when it came down to ice cream. Like, I've never even tried Rocky Road. And also, like, when it would come to, like, 31 flavors, like, I think we went to Baskin Robbins once. Like, I think, like, I wasn't all that creative when I went there either. But yeah, because I think if I liked one thing, if one thing just kind of works for me, I'm not going to go on and just sporadically go through 30 different kinds of ice cream to find the one favorite flavor that I have. I don't know, I guess I'm just not that exciting enough. But it's oddly strange for me to not say that, like, I won't like variety when I like this show that is to be kind of this variety character. So, if only they could have called him Variety Man. That would have been great, right? That doesn't sound like an amazing name. So, they could call the title of the show, like, Variety, and then people are like, well, what the heck does that mean? Is it the comic, or is it the magazine? Anyways, so we have Ben 10 that is to notice that Max is to have been kind of pushed aside. So Ben 10 goes out to switch into one of his heroes, and we find this hillbilly get into this truck, and we have the guy that was to push Max down on the ground. We have him putting this chain to this ATM. So the guy that's in the truck that's wearing overalls that has these like bucktooth teeth, we all of a sudden have him notice that his truck is being taken under control by a alien called Upgrade, which was like, all right, like I don't have Upgrade in the roster of which that I have for like cast list, so I had to kind of go in and look at the image because like, oh yeah, like I remember this being called Upgrade, and by the time that I got to like the actual picture of what it was like, this is probably Upgrade, but I'm not sure because I'd also known about like the other alien that at some point like uh Ben becomes called like Cannonball, where he kind of rolls into a ball. It's kind of like the armadillo kind of character. I think there was also like a Legion character that would just kind of like roll in a ball. He was stupid, but like they just had him in there because they just like, well, hey, we have to have this kind of character in this comic book. So we have Upgrade that is to kick the guy out of his own truck, and then when the other hillbilly is to grab this chain and is to fling it onto Upgrade, Upgrade has this chain kind of attached to his arm, and so Upgrade flings the other hillbilly and smacks him into this pole, and so we go on to have Max tell Ben and Gwen that they're going to see their Aunt Vera, and they're kind of making the road trip there. So, for the weekend, I think is what he says. So, we have, of course, Ben that's complaining like, oh no, we're going down Vera's, this is going to be so boring. Blah. And we, of course, have Ben who's like, well, I want to go on and do everything that's like fun, F-U-N. And we, of course, have Gwen that's like, well, no, I think going down Vera's place will be fun. And Ben's like, well, of course, yeah, Gwen, you're going to say that because, like, you like anything that's similar to a 100-year-old. So, we transition to have Aunt Vera who's talking to a neighbor named Marty. And so, she's talking about how she probably won't even be able to recognize her family members because she hasn't seen them in so long. Or maybe she's just having a case of dementia or Alzheimer's or something. And who knows. So, they don't go through that in this show. They don't go through, like, yeah, like, Aunt Vera, she's really dealing with something. No, that never happens. So, we have Aunt Vera that invites Marty over. Marty's like, yeah, I'll go on and I'll do that. Yeah, that sounds great. So, we have Marty who goes back into his house because, like, dude, like, I never want to go outside again. That just makes him want to talk to people, and I don't want to talk to people. So, Marty goes back into his home, and is to start to turn on the TV, and is to see some movie, and he's grabbing popcorn, and he's like, I don't know why he has to look around at his own house, like as something has changed, because something has changed. We all of a sudden have Marty that is to be attacked by a thing that we only see from the shadow of him getting attacked. So, we then have Ben who's driving up with Max and Gwen in the RV, and he's stating it's like, well, I'm sure the most exciting thing about these people is to do things like watch grass grow, and he all of a sudden sees one of the elderly who is to kind of fall off this roof, but then, like, the guy, like, flips off the roof and then lands perfectly as if he's like a gymnast. And then Ben's like, "Oh my god, did you just see that? That was amazing!" And he starts talking about it. Gwen's like, "Have you been out in the sun for too long? Have you been eating paint chips?" So Ben is not Ben's not coming across as believable to Gwen. So as they arrive at Aunt Vera's house, we all of a sudden have Marty who's looking at the window. It's like, ah, and he like closes the sheets. He's like, wow, I guess not everybody is as easily jazzed that we're all here. So we have Max that tells Ben to protect his cheeks because Aunt Vera likes to squeeze them cheeks. It's kind of like Son-in-Law, where we'd have like Pauly Shore going and taking that one kid who was from like the Sandlot. He was like, "But I need to squeeze them cheeks, and then I'll go on and I'll help you. But I just love them cheeks. I gotta squish them." So we have, of course, both Gwen and Ben who end up getting their cheeks squished. And I guess there was nothing Ben could do to protect his own cheeks. So, luckily, they're the upper cheeks. There could be some weird things going on in this family. So, we have Aunt Vera who's to cook a meal for this family. And she is to, I guess, weirdly just consistently make Jell-O molds. Like as if we're watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, where the one girl has like cat food and all kinds of weird stuff in some Jell-O mold, and they're going on and they're eating this Jell-O mold, and they're like, because like every bit of whatever they're eating in this movie was, and they were like really just, they were having some problems. So come to find out, weirdly enough, in this Jell-O mold, there was pork chops and there was cauliflower in it for some goofy reason. So Vera asks what's been up to lately, and Ben is like, well, yeah, I'm dealing with alien life. And Vera's like, ha 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 ha, yeah, sure, kid. I believe you. Uh-huh, alien life. So Gwen is to realize, like, well, hey, like, if Vera made Ben laugh, I have to go on and I have to win over Vera some way. And so Gwen gets out of her chair and is to go on and look at these like stuffed birds, and she's like, ah, like a bird lady, I see, huh? So Gwen goes on and starts talking about this cockadee, or the chickadee, not cockadee, chickadee, and goes on and talks about its call and this and that, and like both of them know exactly what this call is. And so Ben is just like, yeah, this food is really good, as he's kind of pushing it on to Gwen's plate. He's like, man, yeah, delish. That was a great meal. And we, of course, have Aunt Vera that's like, well, hey, would you like some candy, Ben? And Ben's like, sure, I would love some candy. Great, we're finally getting to some good stuff. And then he goes on and eats his candy. He's like, coffee. The candy tastes like coffee. He's like, no. So Ben runs into the bathroom, and we're thinking like, wow, a show that actually realizes that people go into the bathroom at certain points, because I don't know how many times you would have a show and they wouldn't even recognize a bathroom even exists. Luckily in this show, we actually have a bathroom scene. So Ben goes to the bathroom and he never comes back out of it, it seems. So, we have Ben that is like, you know what, this is the attack of the old people. I need to get out of here. So we have Ben that hero modes, and he becomes Ghost Freak to get away. We have Vera that is hand Gwen this shell, and we have Vera that is tell Gwen, like, hey, put it up to your ear and see what you hear out of it. And Gwen is to do that thing, and we have the shell that tells Gwen, "Loser, loser." So Gwen's like, "Huh?" And so we then have Ghost Freak, who's playing with Gwen, because every time we have to go on and waste so much time with Ben messing with Gwen all the time and having fun with it, to where every episode has to kind of cater to Ben becoming some alien and freaking Gwen out, or freaking other people out. Again, wasting the watch energy. But I guess that's just Ben's fun, and why not go on and kind of play around with this? And like, so I complain about it, but it's also like, if you were to have this idea or whatever, why wouldn't you write things like this into the show? Obviously, I complain about it, but it's a good thing still. So it's like a nitpick kind of thing. But anyways, so we go on to have Ben, who's basically telling Gwen like, "Hey, smell you later." So we have now Ghost Freak who's like, "Well, hey, how can I have some fun? What can I go on and do?" And so all of a sudden, Ghost Freak notices a ghost cart or a ghost cart, a go kart, and there's some clubs in it. So he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna just drive around in this thing." So he takes this and just try to drive around, and then all of a sudden, Ghost Freak sees this pie sitting on a windowsill, and like that is such an old-fashioned cartoon visual. Like, people I don't think do that at all nowadays. Like, I don't see anybody who's sitting a pie on a windowsill, letting it warm up. Like, I rationally in my brain, I'm like, I don't understand why we're still doing that visual. But either way, it's probably for the time, right? So to just, I guess, lure Ghost Freak in to see what unusual thing that this neighbor is doing. So, speaking of neighbor, we have Ben that is to take a huge whiff of this pie to then realize that all of a sudden this woman is just really going ham with this fly swatter. She's going crazy with it. And so finally we just have this neighbor that is to somehow like Spider-Man her way to the wall and is to just grab this fly and take it. And we have Ben that's like, "Oh my god, ninja old people." So we all of a sudden have Ben who makes his way back to the streets to at some point see Marty driving around in this go-kart. He all of a sudden notices a sprinkler system going on, and he freaks out, and he dodges out of the way. He's like, "Oh my god, I'm just crazy driver." And so we have Marty that was like kind of sweating that whole situation, and Ben was like, "Okay, that seemed kind of weird." So Ben just continues to follow Marty. So because we also realized that Marty in his go-kart is to have this kind of rug. And I was like, okay, normally when you'd have a rug, a big rug like that, normally that would be hiding a body. So let's see where the story heads. So Marty is to make his way to this one kind of fenced-in area, and he outstretches his legs to kind of like almost like kind of just hop over this fence. And Ben is like, "Whoa, like these neighbors are so strange." So we have Ben, who of course is still Ghost Freak, and so he continues to kind of just face his way into meeting Marty's like kind of finishing point here. So we come to find out that Marty is to move this dumpster, and there's to be this kind of secret trapped door there. And so he goes on to just kind of like dump this body. And so we find out that Ben is running out of time as Ghost Freak, and then he goes back into being Ghost Freak, or blah, blah, blah. We have Ben that goes back into being Ben. So we have Marty that the front of his face is to, of course, be now the back of his face. And I was like, oh my god, this is cool. So we have Marty that is looking at Ben, is like, ah. And so Ben is like, I'm getting the out of here. Ben is to jump the fence. Marty is to just to use his legs and just kind of hop over again like he did prior. So we have Ben who gets on this go-kart and he's driving as quickly as he can to just get out of here. And so we have Ben that states that he's like, well, I didn't go on and I didn't see his face in the back of his head. I didn't see it, Marty. Like, I didn't... Like, he's trying to plead with the guy to just say that he didn't see anything, but he obviously did. So we have Marty that stretches out his arms to try to grab onto the go-kart. And so we have Marty that gets on top of the go-kart and is trying to grab at Ben. And so the go-kart obviously crashes. And so we find that Marty is going to get to Ben, is going to grab onto him. But then all of a sudden this sprinkler system turns on and Marty goes running off. And so Ben was like, okay, what the heck was that? So we have Ben that shouts at Max and Ben, or Max and Gwen. I'm getting the names confused because it's so easy. So he's telling them about what's going on, and Max is like, pipe down, Vera's sleeping. Also, Ben is like, well, it's so early in the day, it's only 6 o'clock, why is she sleeping now? So Ben starts to explain the usual acts of all the neighbors. I'm not going to go into that again because I've already explained it. So Gwen was to state that Ben was upset that... Gwen states that Aunt Vera was upset that Ben had left. And so Ben is like, well, she's old. She'll get... Like, she'll be fine. Like... She'll get over it. So Ben wants to become Four-Arms and start to go after these neighbors, and Max is like, no. Like, Max is like, I want to go on and definitely do some investigating. Like, at least we'll go on and do that. But, like, we're not really, like, trusting Ben on his word. So Gwen says as soon as Ben is to put on the watch, everything is to become like a weird magnet to him. And Ben is like, well, yeah, like, that's definitely going to be coming true in the other episodes. So we have Max, Ben, and Gwen who head into the neighborhood, and they go into Marty's place. So they think that something may be spooky within this house, but they only find a coat rack. But Ben is to point out to Max, is like, well, hey, this rug is gone. And so Max tells Ben and Gwen to go to bed as Vera is to get infected while the other three are sleeping. So we have been going into Aunt Vera's fridge to realize, like, oh, this is prune juice, hey, some purple stuff, and prune juice, hey, some Sunny D. No, it's all just prune juice. So we have Ben that's like, well, why do old people have to be like doing just old people things? Like, come on. So, like, it would be kind of like Aunt May and the Ultimate Spider-Man show, where like she was to like somewhat look old, but like she did so many like very youthful activities and whatever. Like she had a lot of just spunk to her still. Anyways, so we have Gwen that is to welcome Aunt Vera into the room by saying good morning to her, and all of a sudden we find that Gwen uh, is to drop this thing of coffee on the floor after Ben is to get his cheek squished. So we all of a sudden have Vera who's doing the splits on these walls. She's like splitting it up, and she is like, clean that up, clean that up. And it's like, okay, like she's acting kind of weird for Aunt Vera. I didn't know that she was that freaking flexible. Man, old ladies, there's something mysterious about them, isn't there? So, oddly enough, anyways, so uh, we have Vera that after that whole situation is resolved, she asked the kids like, well, hey, like, where is Max? And they're like, oh, like he went out for a walk because that's what he said he was gonna do anyways. So we then have Vera that's like, oh, okay, thanks, kids, and then she leaves. Just go after him. It's like, okay, that seems very weird and not like her. So Ben is to go on and say it's like, well, she must be one of them. And so Ben and Gwen walk through the neighborhood to get to that trap door that Ben had seen prior. And he's like, well, yeah, we need to go get to that dumpster and find out where that trap door leads. So we have Vera that is to ask Marty and this other neighbor if their food source is ready. And we, of course, have Marty that states that it's going through its final digestion as the or as as Marty is to ask about the younglings or the youngins, and say like, well, hey, what are we gonna do with them? And we have Vera that's like, well, no, they're too chewy. Like we'd be better off just kind of getting the more seasoned people, or just kind of have them go down easier. And so they're like, no. Like, I think we should try to eliminate the young kids because they know too much. So it's like, okay, that seems like an idea. So Gwen and Ben walk on through this neighborhood to find two elderly girls playing shuffleboard. And I don't know the actual pieces that go into like the shuffleboard, but at some point these elderly people to get their yellow fangs out, like ha, and want to go on and attack both Gwen and Ben. And so they end up tossing out these like puck things, and they start like smacking both Ben and Gwen, trying to get them. So we have both Ben and Gwen who walk up to Max and like, oh, hey, Max, like he's not infected yet. And then we all of a sudden find out that Max is infected, as he has to have his own set of yellow teeth. And it's to try and go on and at first make it seem like, oh, everything's okay. And then no, he goes on and attacks the kids. So we go on to have Ben hero mode into Wild Mutt, throwing the dumpster to get to the trap door. Gwen rides Wild Mutt, which leads them to this tunnel where the elderly are following them. And I know that I should probably call them Limaxes, but I'm not going to because they're not actually in their alien form. So I'm just going to call them the elderly. And I know a lot of people go on and like, well, I don't like the word elderly. Can't you just go on and call them this or that? I'm sorry if that offends anybody. It's not the way of which that I would assume that that word might offend somebody, but then again, who knows? It's 2020 something now, so it's 2023. How do you not know? This could be watched in the future. Who knows? So, with that said, it's future date of whatever. Anyway, moving on. So, we have Max that tries as Alien Max, the Limax, tries grabbing them with his kind of outstretched arms, and Wild Mutt goes on to grab Limax and tosses him aside onto hitting against this tunnel. So we have Max and Wild Mutt just starting to wrestle, and Gwen notices that Wild Mutt is not really, or wait, we have at one point while both Wild Mutt and Max are fighting it out, we all of a sudden have Max is like, well, hey, like, you don't want to you don't want to hurt me, do you? Like, I thought you loved me, Max. I thought you loved me, Ben. And so Wild Mutt is just kind of like, oh, like he's using my feelings against me. And so Gwen is going to have to convince Ben or convince Wild Mutt that Max is not who he is. Like, they're going to find the real Max and save him. So Wild Mutt is like, okay, just slap around that Max and just kind of get to where the other ones really are. So we have both Gwen and Wild Mutt that runs off. So we have Ben that runs out of time for Wild Mutt, but Wild Mutt was to go on and sense where the other potted people were. So we come to find that these people are being these kind of like circular pods, and so they go on and figure out which pod that Max is in and kind of open that up. And so it's like, all right. So we have, of course, Max that doesn't really remember what happened. And then the elderly end up turning into the Limaxes. And so Gwen opens the ship by accident. She just kind of touches it because she's getting kind of pulling further and further back, and she touches the ship by accident. And so the Limaxes are kind of freaking out because they're like, oh my god, like, hey, like, they're going to go on and try to take all the pods out of our ship. Like, hey, let's try to get out of here. So we have Ben that hero modes into Heat Blast to try to take on these Limaxes while both Max and Gwen are going to pull out all the pods and kind of roll them out of there. Roll them out of the ship. So we have Heat Blast, and he blasts the Limaxes, but they're like, ha 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 ha, you stupid kid. Like, you didn't realize that, like, we of course love the heat. It's like, well, yeah, like, how would, like, Ben know, like, what is to be the weakness and non-weakness of any number of these things? And so we have all the Limaxes that combine into one bigger Limax. And so we have them state that they love the heat because, of course, that's the reason why they even came to this location. And so Ben tries punching the Limax with no effect. So Gwen and Max try to pull the pods away from the ship and start to get attacked by one of the Limaxes. We have Gwen that is to lose her backpack and find that there's a watered squirt gun, and she starts spraying the squirt gun into the Limax to find out that this is its one true weakness. It's signs all over again, folks. So we have Gwen that realizes that, hey, like, they hate water, and Ben's like, well, yeah, like, I remember when Marty was to be freaking out from that sprinkler. And so Ben is kind of looking, or Heat Blast is kind of looking around, and he sees a pipe that is to kind of drip a bit of water. So he's like, aha, this must be like the water pipe. I can go on and kind of hit it, and it will kind of spray out a decent amount of water and really affect these Limaxes. So we have the Limaxes that end up getting so weak from that water that they take off and they go into their ship and they leave without all the pods. And so we, of course, have, now that this seems to be resolved, we have Max, Gwen, and Heat Blast. And it's like, okay, we need to go on and get all these people back to their homes and not have them think that anything unusual had happened, or maybe that they were all kind of like sleeping this all off. So we have Ben that's like, well, if I can just, like, give me a minute and maybe I can turn into Accelerate and I can go on and quickly kind of get all these people. So Vera tells Max and the kids to not be a stranger, as Vera gives Gwen another Jello mold that has all this like weird mixture of it, and she gives her that because it's like, well, yeah, Ben said that you really love this Jello mold, so I'm gonna go on and give this to you. And Gwen's like, oh, great, that's great. So Aunt Vera also hopes that Ben didn't find him being here too boring, and Ben was like, no, like, I loved being here, as he goes on and hugs Aunt Vera. And so as Ben drives away, we have Aunt Vera that's like, well, hey, like, I hope you have more fun with alien life. And Ben is like, are you serious? And so Ben goes into the RV and we drive off. So and I also think that there is like a scene where the Limaxes are kind of like crawling their way into possibly telling us that there's going to be another Limax story somewhere down the road for Ben 10. So the next episode, we go into Vilgax, who is to hire 3 bounty hunters, as it seems that he's going to test their skills with these mecha droids, but easily goes on and has them all, the bounty hunters just take all of them out. So he's like, okay, I'm going to hire all 3 of you. We see Crab with 2 A's. So Crab. Someone could probably eventually know how that's pronounced. But I'm going to go with Crab. Sounds good enough. We have 6-6, who's to kind of be this kind of like purple-black mixture. It's really cool. Then, of course, we have Teltrax, who we'll find out will get revealed of who, like, Teltrax really is. So we have hunters that destroy the mecha droids, and so they get hired on the spot to retrieve the Omnitrix. Because that's the big goal, is like, well, hey, like, we got to have these 3 bounty hunters all together to go after this thing. So we then go into this kind of very opened area that has this unusual obstacle course, as Max is to set up this whole thing to force Ben to much more strategize. That he shouldn't go on and just muscle through everything. That instead, like, he should try to like think before he leaps. So we have Gwen that goes on and insults Ben while she, of course, is just tanning off the side. And so while Ben is to be Diamondback in his training here, we have him go and kind of hit all these diamonds with all these random objects. And so, like, pop cans are to kind of be chucked into the air, and Diamondback is to kind of shoot every one of them. We accidentally have Ben almost hitting Gwen with one of his attacks, and so Gwen is like, "Oh my god, you almost killed me!" It's like, "Well, I'm sorry." So we have, of course, Gwen that's like, you know what? Like, I want to go on and see you get your like butt kicked. Like, I want to go on and see you lose. When you're gonna go on and fight against one of these monsters, because one day it's going to happen, and she wants to be there. And so Max is saying that it's like, well, Ben, like, you're just not taking this seriously enough, and that is your main problem. Like, you think that you can just kind of easily, like, this is all just gonna be an easy cakewalk for you. They can just, really just think that you can take everything down. And so, yeah, so we have Tetrax, who is to have a location of Ben's last signal, and so they're tracking it. So we have all the hunters that are kind of fighting over one another right away, as we are to see through this obstacle course that 6-6 is to grab this can that has this diamond in it, and Tetrax grabs it from him. And so we have Crab, who's like, wow, like, okay, like, I guess you guys are going to be friends about this, right? You're going to be a friendly competition. So we have them kind of leave this site and realize that no one is obviously there. Tetrax is to kind of accidentally hit this one bit of rope that is to bring up these one objects, and so Tetrax is to kind of just blast these things and then just go off to wherever they're going to need to go next to find out where Ben 10 is going to be now. So the RV breaks down at a place called Slatterville. So Max finds that it's all because of a leaky gas, a gas pipe. So, or a leaky gas hose. There we go. So, gas line, whatever. Anyways, so Ben thinks that he can use one of the aliens to fix this problem, and Max is like, no, you've helped more than enough. So, Gwen follows Ben as Gwen is to go into this location and start messing around with things, and because Gwen has to be forced to follow Ben because Max is just like, just go in there with him because he might just blow something up by accident. So we have Gwen that follows Ben, and Gwen notices, like, he hears Gwen coming, so he's like, like, I can play a joke on her. So we have Ben that turns into Ghost Freak and scares, or tries to scare Gwen. But then all of a sudden, Krob appears, and Ben thinks, like, he's got this, like, oh man, like, I'm gonna take this thing down, and says that Krob is ugly. So yeah, I was traumatized by the visual of Krob or Crab. So much so I couldn't sleep for one whole minute after watching these 3 videos. So Krob, of course, wants the Omnitrix because that's what every one of these bounty hunters wants. And Ghost Freak is to try and make Krob understand that him and the Omnitrix are attached. Like, it's not going to come off anytime soon. And Krob is like, well, I think with my kind of my crab hand here, I can make that happen. So we have Ghost Freak that disappears, and Gwen is like, and then she walks off. So Ghost Freak disappears to reappear behind Krob, and Krob is just kind of just rotate his head and he's like, seriously? Like, that's the best you got? So Crab immediately takes this one gadget to uh to to kind of just spray this gook or this gunk or whatever all over Ghost Freak to then force him to become solid. And so Ghost Freak is like, oh crap, well, the one thing that I had. Man, does that just suck. So we go on to have Ghost Freak that gets thrown all over the place, and Gwen says that she's like, well, hey, like, I was just kidding about that whole, like, me being there personally to see you get beaten. And Ghost Freak continues to fight Krob, and Krob feels like, man, this is an easy win. And so Gwen tells Ghost Freak to give Krob a lift. And we have Ben that's like, okay, what is she talking about? But then all of a sudden he sees this lever. He's like, aha, lift! And we all of a sudden see Krob, who goes onto this like hydraulic lift, and it starts to lift up and smashes him to have him kind of disappear for a moment here. So we all of a sudden have Tetrix that was kind of watching on as this fight. So Max asks the kids, is like, oh, hey, what happened? And Gwen is like, well, yeah, just another attack as usual. But Max said that they're leaving. Like, hey, let's just get into the RV and let's just try to get out of here. So while they're driving off, we have 6-6 who is to kind of just saw his way through the top of this RV and is kind of pulling it apart. Like, if anybody was to ever gone on and seen like Terminator Rise of the Machines, where we have the one like girl Terminator that goes on and like saws through the top of the hearse and kind of rips it open and is trying to get to John Connor, and John Connor has a gun and that AK-47. He's like starts blasting all over the Terminator girl. But then that whole moment, sure, you know exactly what I'm talking about because you've never seen that film in your life. So I didn't even see past the first one. I've never seen any of the Terminators. Oh, did he say Terminator or Terminator? I don't know. I've never seen it in my life. Anyways, so we have, of course, Max that quickly just pulls the brake on this RV to have 6-6 go flying in front of the car. And Max is like, okay, I'm going to just run this baby down. And so we have the RV, and once Max runs over 6-6, he then realizes that there are some tires that are, of course, are popped. So we don't have in like the next episode where Max is to go on and get like spare tires. I guess he luckily has some. But man, is that going to be like a expensive just money throwing thing that he's going to have to go on and get extra tires. But anyways, let's move on. So we have Max and the kids that go into a mine, and they're just kind of like, well, this is the only like spot that we could probably be saved. So they start running into this mine, and Crab and 6-6 are starting to just kind of fight one another. As we have like Crab who kind of like drills his way into like coming behind 6-6 and starts attacking him. So Crab then drills into the mine and is to appear seemingly in front of where the three of these guys were to be, and so they start to continue to run here. So they find that all of a sudden there's this big, huge, wide open gap. They're like, okay, where do we go next? And so they start to see that there is to be this this lift, this kind of lift-like thing, this kind of contraption that you can go on and go from one place to the other. I don't know the exact words, but it's kind of like how you would like see like a ski lift. You know I'm trying to get at here. Good enough. So we have the three of them getting into this lift, and so we have 6-6 that attacks Crab and flies to the lift. Ben luckily can now hero mode, and we of course have Max is like, maybe that's not a good idea. And so Max just becomes Diamond Head. And so Diamond Head, once they get to the other side of things, is to kind of let both Max and Gwen like, hey, get out of here. Like, I'm going to go on and I'll like distract them and I'll try to fight them off. So and he'll catch up with them. So we go on to have 6-6 and Crab start bickering, and Tetrax gasses the both of them. And so we have Tetrax that grabs Diamond Head because his Diamond Head is kind of taken out by both these bounty hunters kind of double teaming and trying to get to Diamond Head. So, and Diamond Head. And so Tetrax is just baffled by, out of all the people on this planet who could have gotten the Omnitrix, why did it had to fall into the hands of a troubled youth? So we have Diamond Head that says like, well, hey, like it can't come off. Like, I try to explain it to all you other people, but you guys just don't get that. And so Tetrax is like, well, of course it can, because it like bonds to your DNA. It's not something that can just be taken on and off like anything else in the world. So we have Tetrax that is just kind of complaining to Ben. It's like, well, yeah, like, you have no strategy. Everything that you are trying to do is just brute strength. It's a stupid idea. So Diamondback is to say, it's like, well, hey, I've won some battles in the past. And so Tetrax is like, well, yeah, but how are things going with you lately? Like, how successful are you lately? And so Diamond Head says, like, well, like, that's only because he was outnumbered. And Tetrax says, like, well, man, like, you should have won easily. Like, you should have taken these guys out like it was nobody's business. But instead, like, you are just the worst. Like, it's kind of like Spider-Man Homecoming. Whenever anybody would go on and kind of tell Spider-Man, it's like, you're really bad at this, aren't you? And Spider-Man's like, well, hey, I'm learning. Hey, I'm trying. Hey, like, I'm trying to do good, but it's just hard. Like, because I'm just, like, I don't go on and do these kind of bigger events. I'm just kind of like common crime is where Spider-Man's real bread and butter really is. So we have Tetrax who is telling Diamondback as well, hey, like, the Omnitrix is not just some toy. It's a device that is to use for the fight of good and evil. And so we, of course, have Diamondback, well, what side are you on? And so we come to find out that Tetrax is on the side of good. He's trying to do the right thing here, but his goal is to also like obtain the Omnitrix, and by the people that, of course, he's working for. So Diamond isn't going with Tetrix or anybody else. So it's like, well, that's definitely out. So both of them starts wrestling, and so Tetrax is to tell Diamond Head that he hasn't even used his full potential for the alien species of which that Ben has become. And so Diamondback was like, well, how would you even know? And we find out that Tetrax is to kind of armor himself, and we find that Tetrax is a Diamond Head character himself. So it's like, all right, like I knew that reveal. Like I was like, oh yeah, that's like another Diamond Head guy. But it's been like such a while since I've seen the show. But still, I was like, all right, that's another Diamond Head guy. So I already knew already. But so we have Ben realize that again he's out of time for the Diamond Head. So we have Ben that gets grabbed by Tetrix, and all of a sudden Crab is to mention that he's like, hey, Tetrix, I have your hoverboard. You're not getting off this planet without it. So we have 6-6 that has both Gwen and Max, and Crab is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, me and 6-6, we're working together, and we're going to share the bounty, and so, like, Tetrix, what are you going to do? So we have the both of them that kind of run off into this place to kind of shield themselves. We have Cracks that kind of blast through this building, hoping to take out one of these characters. So we have Ben that tells Tetrax that he wants to go on and save his family, and Tetrax is to tell him, it's like, Ben, like you need to focus on keeping the Omnitrix safe. Like, that should be your one and only goal. Ben wants to have him instead focus on saving his family. And so Tetrix is to say, it's like, well, no, like, that would be foolish. And Ben could be captured in the process. Like, Tetrix is like, well, no, I'm going to go on and get my hoverboard back. So Tetrix fires diamonds and runs to get his hoverboard, and he obtains it. So from Krob, so Tetrix starts attacking both bounty hunters and easily starts taking them both out. It's like, all right, this is pretty sweet. We have Tetrix on his hoverboard, and he's kind of flying around. But so Ben now has his watch, and he can, again, go into hero mode. So we have Krob that is to notice Ben, like, in this facility, in this place, as 6 is distracted with Tetrax. So Crab goes on to get to Ben, and Ben is kind of looking at all these combinations of all these aliens he can use. I'm like, okay, like, hopefully he finally hears any of those people that went on and told him, like, hey, like, strategy instead of strength. So Ben goes on and is like looking at all the aliens. Is like, well, it could be easy to just be like forearms, but like, maybe I should try something different. So in thinking about it, like, there's going to be a lot of times where Ben is going to be stuck being a number of aliens in the worst possible situations, and how is he going to use these aliens to best benefit him? Like, when we had Megawatt, that whole episode, I was thinking, like, wouldn't Upgrade be like the best like for that situation, and then when they get upgrade, it's like they just treat it as like, oh well, he wasn't supposed to be upgrade, he just ended up getting that. But I was like, you know what, you should have had upgrade. That would have made the most sense. Kind of having a character that can hop in between things, and upgrade can do that too. But so we have, of course, Ben become gray matter, the kind of the shrink, the small alien. And so what happens is like gray matter is just kind of walking along this pipe, and then he jumps on top of Crab, and he starts pulling off of some of the like the in between spots where he can kind of pull away some wires. And so we go on to have Ben, that is to start to use that strategy for both of these bounty hunters to try and take them out. So we have Ben that takes out Krob, and then he goes off to start to find where 66 is, and 66 sees gray matter, and so he's like, aha. And we have Max that jumps on 66 back, and 66 tosses Max. So that's, of course, when gray matter is to jump on 66 back and kind of pull out wires and stuff like that, trying to defeat 66 in the same way that he beat Krob at. So once both of them have their wires being pulled out, especially after 66 is to have his jetpack malfunction, he starts flying all over the place, then he falls. We then have gray matter that goes on to have this water tower fall, and Krob is like, I hate this planet. So we have Tetrix that is actually complimenting gray matter and calling him a smart human. And so Tetrix cubes both 66 and Krob and puts him in this container cube. Light blue, of course. So, and is willing to leave the Omnitrix with Ben instead of taking it, because he's like, you know what, I think that this Omnitrix is in good hands. It's like, wow, what a surprise a whole, like, short period can go on and be, where we have Tetrix who's like, no, like, I'm going to take this Omnitrix, because people are telling me that I need to go on and I need to take it. And then he goes on like, no, like, I think I trust this young kid to not fool around with this toy still that he's treating it as. So we even have, even further, we have Tetrix who just gives Ben his hoverboard, and Ben was like, wait a minute, like, I thought you needed the hoverboard to, like, leave this planet. And Tetrix is like, no, like, I didn't need that at all. And so I was like, what? Ben was like, yeah, he lied about it. And so I guess we have Tetrix who is to go on and teleport, and that's how he leaves the planet. So Gwen is upset that Ben gets all the cool stuff, and kind of dumps sunscreen on Ben's head because of his big head is gonna need all that sunscreen. So we have Vilgax, who is to be told by his drone, his bioid, that the mercenaries were, of course, to not be successful of taking the Omnitrix. And so we then have Vilgax, who's like, well, like, then we must assume that the Omnitrix wielder is to be much smarter than we first assumed. So next up we have Max and the kids. Or no. Yeah, we'll go with what I just said there. We have Max and the kids that are driving in the RV, and this is the following episode. So we have Ben, who is looking out of this window and is mocking some kid, kind of just pressing his face against this window, like, and doing all these kind of goofy faces. We all of a sudden have the kid who's on the other side kind of taking and chewing this food, like, So we have Ben who's like, well, hey, like, I have one thing that's going to go on, and just immediately, like, this is going to be a thing that this kid can't do. So Ben transforms into Stinky Fly, and it's like, so the kid's like, ah, and all of a sudden the daddy's even looking out the window, and he's like, ah. Stupid but funny moment it was. So we go on to have Max desperately needing Ben to get to the front of the RV, and when Max quickly pulls on the brake, Maxon realizes that Ben is to already be in hero mode, so he's like, okay, good, like, you're already a person, great, this works. So we come to find out that there is to be this accident with this semi-truck, and that if they don't rush to get this guy out of there, then he might just be shot off to the moon. So we have like Stinky Fly that's like, man, like, there's so much heat here, I wish I could have been Heat Blast. But he's like, well, you know what, like, that kind of gives me an idea. So Stinky Fly starts to use his goop that he kind of spits out here as a way to take out all this fire. And then he goes on to use his tail to open up this driver's truck, and is to grab the guy. So we of course have Stinky Fly that saves the day. So Max has a surprise for both Ben and Gwen that he's been waiting all summer to just give them this one location, and they're like, okay, like, what could this possibly be? So the kids come to find out that this place is to be called Sparkville or Sparksville. So, and this is a place with unusually large things, it comes to find out. We have the mayor that greets Max and the kids, and the way in which that this mayor talks, it's very funny. It's just kind of very, like, hey guys, how's it going? The humanity of it all. I just found the mayor to be kind of funny. So we go on to have Ben and Gwen that is like, start to take tickets to go to these kind of oddball things. And we even have the mayor, who's to be kind of the ticket man. And they're like, wait a minute, like, weren't you also just the mayor? And the mayor is like, well, kids, like, the mayor is going to have many hats. And so they go into all these goofy and funny places and take all these weird, goofy pictures. So the next thing that we see is that both Ben and Gwen are going through these double doors to see it. They don't explain what it is. They just say it's like, yeah, it. So they all of a sudden are to see a bunch of neon signs that all have these kind of warning labels and whatever on them, telling to take a huge it to go on and give a it, and and so on and so forth. So that's not exactly what any of the signs say, but I'm just making a joke out of it. So, like, basically, it's like, well, hey, don't have flash photography in front of the it, don't touch the it, like, that's all the stuff that they say here. So at the end of it all, they find out that what it really is, as Ben is like, I want to know, what is it? Come to find out, it's just this big, huge, massive rubber ball that is to really just be seemingly, like, almost the size of a human being, if not bigger, because it's even as big as Forearms is, which is a really big alien. So speaking of forearms, we have Ben and Gwen that are just looking at this rubber ball and they're like, oh my god, like, this is really all that this is? It is? So they're like, well, you know what? Like, this seems to be some big, massive practical joke. So how will we go on and get even with this town? And so Ben becomes forearms and he's just like having this huge rubber ball and he's having it and like, what should we do with it? And so we all of a sudden have Ben who is to like say that his character forearms is to be so strong. He's like, well, I can go on and just hold this with one arm, and then he realizes that it gets kind of out of his hand and starts to like smack and bounce, and so the rubber ball starts flying all over town as it crashes through this one room, and it's to start to smack through all these items and destroy certain large items and take down some of the playing cards and like, oh my god, like, what should we do? And Ben's like, I think I can kind of quickly clean this up, as all of a sudden Ben is to turn back to Ben again, and then he's like, oh crap. So we all of a sudden have like Ben and Gwen, and we have them kind of like, what should we do? Like, how should we play this off? Ben's like, well, I think we should just kind of play dumb. And Gwen's like, well, like, I don't know how to play dumb. Like, you're way better at it than me. I don't think it'll work out. So we all of a sudden have like Max telling the kids like, well, hey, isn't this place a riot? Isn't it great? And Gwen is like, riot? What? Who that? So she starts uncontrollably talking about it seeming like them being in trouble. And Max is to kind of like shushola Gwen. So Ben goes on and tells Max, is like, well, yeah, like, I love this place. Like, I can't wait to see what the bathrooms look like. So Ben and Gwen are to make their way to just kind of go to bed. But then bizarrely we find out that their beds are like on this wall. And so we find that Ben is to kind of like just fall out of his bed easily because it's on the wall anyways. So we find out that this alien called Megawatt had gone on to attack the town within the night. And so we have Max that calls both the kids out to see the carnage that was to have happened within the town. And we have Ben and Gwen who's like, well, hey, like, how could it be possible that like a storm could have went through here or whatever? And so we have the mayor that easily realizes that it was Megawatt and somehow it had gotten loose. So we find Megawatt and it's just kind of this really small battery looking alien. And so he goes and is to wreak havoc, and we have the mayor that goes on and says like, well, yeah, like, Megawatt has a really odd sense of humor. And so we have Megawatt that goes into this vending machine and just starts spitting out all the cans, just firing at people with all these cans. So we have the mayor that states, is like, well, you know what, like, I think this all would have been avoided if someone would have just minded the signs. So we have Ben that is to finally take the blame instead of kind of dodging the question and dodging that they did anything. So the mayor demands that Max and the kids take care of Megawatt, because considering they were the ones to unleash it out on the world, they're going to have to take care of it. So we have Max is like, well, hey, I'm going to discipline you kids later. Like, you run amucks. So we go on to have Ben, who's like, okay, well, I can go and turn into hero mode again. So let's see what kind of combination of an alien I could be today. So we have Megawatt that wedgies Max, and so Ben is to turn into Upgrade, and Gwen is like, why Upgrade? And Ben is like, well, like, you don't get my strategy. And Gwen's like, the watch didn't let you become the alien that you wanted to become, did it? And he's like, no. So, Upgrade rolls the rubber band down this street, and like pieces of the rubber band start going flying and starting hitting people. And Gwen's like, "Oh my god! Like Ben, like Upgrade, what side are you on?" And so Upgrade's like, "Sorry." So we come to find out that Upgrade was to shoot this blast from out of his face. It's like, okay, that's a new attack. So like, it didn't go on and have like a huge effect on Megawatt, but it was just something that uh, we're starting to see like the upgrades of these monsters or these aliens, and to see like what benefit they can have or what skill they can bring to the table now. Now that we've kind of just seen the plain, like the one-off attacks that the character uses quite often. Now we have to kind of switch it up and just be like, okay, we now need to see like the level 2 or the level 3 or the level 4 of these aliens and how more effective the aliens can be somewhere more down the road, to just kind of give people a different spin on these characters again when we start to reuse them. Because after you go on and you give like 10 different aliens throughout seemingly 6 episodes, we then have to go on up like, okay, now we have to like figure out how we can make them unique enough. But so I think the one thing that happens with that probably happened with Ben 10 as well as it also happened with like Pokemon is we would go on and have a lot of people who loved like the original like set of aliens in the original Ben 10, but then they went on and they changed it and they got like a whole new batch of aliens in another season. And I think that probably went on and kind of made a lot of people just like, like I only like the early stages of Ben 10. So, anyways, we go on to we have Max stating that it's like, well, hey, like, we really need to ground this Megawatt. And Gwen's like, oh my god, I have a great idea. Like, thank you for saying that. So we have Upgrade that takes a metal piece and cuts into Megawatt, and it cuts him in half. But then we find out that Megawatt all of a sudden becomes 2 megawatts. So we have Upgrade that it's like, well, I guess that wasn't a great idea. So Max grabs Upgrade and is to bring him into this truck, and so like Ben runs out of time for Upgrade, and so he goes back to Ben. So we have them driving along, and so once the kind of thing releases from the back of their truck and goes flying and hits Megawatt, we find out that this thing was this big thermostat, or this a thermometer, my bad. So thermometer. So we have this thermometer that lands onto the ground, and they're like, and Gwen's just boasting about like, yeah, like, why do you need superpowers when you can just be smart? All right. She's like boasting about that. It's like, yeah, like, even the smartest dudes, whenever you would have a team with the smartest person, we often just have to realize that you could be smart, but then like that doesn't mean that the monster is going to get easily defeated by whatever your strategy is. So, and then we realize that. So we have the mayor that is telling Gwen, it's like, well, you do realize that the ground is just a conductor, right? and he will just uh, go into some place to just find a way back. And so we come to find out that the phone lines are to be a way for Megawatt to get back out and start wreaking havoc again. And so Megawatts, because there's multiple of them now, we have them like tossing these toothpicks, these massive toothpicks, and they start almost kind of hitting people. And so the mayor is like commonly crazed as he's like, oh, the humanity. So Megawatt is to all of a sudden become this big, massive solar system like thing. And it looks like a person, but then again, it doesn't look like a person. So we come to find out that I guess the Megawatts had also decorated Max's RV, and it says that you are lame. And we of course have Ben that's like, seriously, like what a horrible like joke, what a horrible thing to just do on somebody's RV. And so like, well, yeah, like this thing has a horrible sense of humor. So we have the mayor that says like, yeah, the Megawatt will be heading to the dam to power up and destroy this town and probably the next. So Megawatt starts destroying the dam, and we have Megawatt that gets blasted by Heat Blast. Cause it's like, aha, like we're gonna have Ben who kind of creatively comes up with a way to beat a Megawatt here. So we all of a sudden have Heat Blast that is trying to slide down this dam, and it's realized that there's to be this fireball that all of a sudden we find that Heat Blast is kind of riding on. It's kind of like when Static Shock would have that that sewer or that kind of just metal like board thing that he would just fly around on. So, but so Heat Blast is kind of riding this fireball like a surfboard almost. So we have Heat Blast that tries to attack Megawatt, but it like Heat Blast just kind of goes down. He just kind of gets beaten. He kind of gets chucked. So Gwen is to take a hose and start to just blast Megawatt, and then Heat Blast takes this really big fireball, like the size of his head or the size of like his whole entire body, and just tosses it. So we have Heat Blast that is to go on and have this kind of mystery object that it's like, well, hey, come over here and be in this thing. And so Megawatt's like, okay, like we're game. So they go from the solar system thing to now make their way to this kind of circular object that's underneath this blanket. And come to find out, that is to be a fishbowl, the biggest fishbowl that they could find. And so Heat Blast goes on to blast the top of this fishbowl to contain the Megawatt. So it's like, aha, like they figure out a way to finally beat it. So the mayor is fixing up the town, and we have, of course, Max that is like, well, hey, like this really must have devastated the town. And the mayor's like, well, yeah, but we do have a new attraction, which of course is the world's biggest light bulb, as we find that that the mayor is to figure out a way to benefit of having the Megawatts there. So, and they're going to kind of contain them in this light bulb. And so we again have the mayor who's to tell Ben, it's like, Well, yeah, hopefully, as long as everybody minds the signs, like, I think we'll be fine. So, we go and have Ben, who was talking about practical jokes, and how it's like, okay, like, I think, like, a practical joke can be fun and all, but, like, so, we all of a sudden have Ben, who has to open this RV door, and all of a sudden gets this bucket of water kind of poured on his head. And we, of course, have Max like, I gotcha. So that is to be, of course, the way this episode ends. And I, of course, am going to get out of here. Let me know in the comments below how you felt about these episodes. And thank you for watching this for whatever reason. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Hour and a half. Holy crap. Yeah, I did not expect that to take that long. I apologize, but I'm going to get out of here. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.